하파로도 선바 저게 너는 something 파로스 뭐 공도 성네 다 두바다라 셰랍데 파로도 선바래.
The last we have heard of the 6 parameters or the 6 transcendent virtues, which are those which are being practiced by them who strive towards the awakening of Buddhahood, was the parameter or the transcendent virtue of concentration, meditative absorption. Now the 6th from among these 6 is the parameter which is commonly known as PrajnaParamita, which is the transcendent virtue of wisdom or awareness.
다텔라 아니 셰랍라 나시게 여와 셰랍 넘바 섬스 담보 투베게 셰랍 니바다라 섬바게 셰랍 섬바다라 강비 셰랍데 아니 투상 강선라 셰랍 넘바 섬 토근도.
Again, as before, this transcendent virtue of wisdom or knowledge is subdivided into 3 subdivisions. The first of these is the wisdom that, or the knowledge that comes together through the application of hearing or learning, for that matter. Literally, it's called hearing, by way of making oneself familiar with whatever contents of whatever subject one is presently studying. The second wisdom or knowledge is that which comes from reflecting about that which one has heard or learned. That is the wisdom of reflection, which comes from or through reflection. And the third wisdom or knowledge that appears, or that one has to talk about, is that which comes through training oneself, or literally through meditation. So there is listening or learning, there is reflecting, and then there is training or meditating. These 3 subdivisions of PrajnaParamita, of the transcendent virtue of wisdom or knowledge there are.
다텔라 탐베 투비샤라 아니 조게위 신인제 이den거도 라마동 캠보다 소유나 제라 되네 다 되게 되는 나랑게 되는 용동 제라서 동어 그 추강라 하나 다지 나랑게 무바당 덴바 덴다를 용카에나 제라다 게위 신인나 되는 나랑라 라브루지 쇼네 되는지
The first type of knowledge or wisdom, which occurs through listening or through learning, depends for the most part upon an authentic source of such learning. And an authentic source for such learning is invariably a teacher, the one who is commonly known as a virtuous friend, a Geveshenyan in Tibetan, or PrajnaParamita is the Sanskrit term. And we have to approach such teachers who have the knowledge of the Dharma that we want to learn, in order to hear, in order to learn the teaching from them. So they are to be approached, they are to be requested to teach us whatever it is that we wish to learn. Now it's up to ourselves to approach such teachers, such virtuous friends or Kalyana Mitras, and request teachings and instructions from them. We wish to learn a certain aspect of something, a certain aspect of the Dharma, yet because we are still ignorant about them. So what is to be done? What is to be done is to go into the presence of a teacher, request the teaching from him or her, for that matter. And this way we start off with the entire process, by way of requesting whatever knowledge it is that we wish to learn for ourselves.
Attenite tuberge Sherab Latine, Tiget Ante, Naronsona, Togo.
To use an example, we could, for instance, go into the presence of a teacher and then hear the instruction that all of that which is normally called conventional reality, all of the world of appearances and phenomena as we perceive it, is empty of any self-nature, free of any substance whatsoever, has no inherent self-nature onto itself, out of itself whatsoever. The entire world and everything that we perceive within it, even all the way down to our very own perceiving consciousness, is empty of such a self-nature, period. Now, having heard such an instruction, we could then start to think about, to reflect about that which we have heard, and we could come possibly to the conclusion that indeed it truly is like that. Now that kind of knowledge or that kind of intelligence which would occur through having heard such a teaching is exactly that which is known as the knowledge or the wisdom that occurs through hearing or through learning, for that matter.
Ati tubi Sherab Sangire Matonge, Naronsonga, Tigetana, Gomne, Gombeke, Sherab, Sente, Temperance and Batongi, or Shagni, and really told your mother. Tubi Sherab Sangire. Tubi Sherab Latine, Chu Tangi, Demba Madrupa, Dumato Manantava, Samba Sangi, Mela Yamna, make it taking. Learning
such things by way of hearing, by way of listening to them, by way of learning them through whatever instructions we receive, is one thing. What it, for the most part, provides us with is, to begin with, nothing else but a new set of ideas, a new set of opinions. And even if we're being told time and again that appearances and phenomena are empty, they're empty, and they continue to be empty, we might believe them to be so. We might think about these teachings and instructions, and we might come to think that indeed, yes, it makes sense, it seems very logical, so therefore empty they are. But we're still a very far ways off from having made that an actual experience. We have heard such teachings and instructions, we might have possibly thought about them, and we might have recognized them as valid for ourselves, and therefore we might have made them our own opinion, yet there is no actual experience, real life experience, of that emptiness that we're talking about at all yet. And this is very easily tested. You might be told time and again that appearances and phenomena are empty. Well, fire is a phenomena. You might try this out and put your hand inside a fire or stick your finger into a flame, and immediately you will experience that there is a rather great lack of emptiness by means of still burning your finger. So instead of having realized as a true experience that all of these phenomena and appearances are truly empty and therefore not existence, you have so far only exchanged one set of views or opinion for another. Experience in itself has not yet arisen at all.
Sherab Nibaji told Sherab Nibaji told Mumoga, Chutangi, Malam, Manta, Yembati, Naranga, Tubarawa. Yenaya, Sombi Sherab Latini, Tanguni, Chutangi, Demba Madrupa, Yengendo, Sambandra Water. Then Naranzonga Sendala, young Trupa Tangi, Tarawata, Yepadam, Mepadam, Nika Yanga, Niba Maimba. Nika imba, nika maimba. Then ta ye, Trupa Jidum Tawaji, Nili Sendaland and the Ogando Sa.
I forgot to say before, Rinpoche said, no matter how often we're told that all of these appearances and phenomena are dreamlike, as long as this is only intellectual knowledge and no experience, then they will still continue to manifest themselves as rather real. Now, having heard such an instruction, having been told all of this is empty of any self-nature, that in itself is only an idea and an opinion which we might make our own or not. In order to truly come to understand what such an instruction means, we for ourselves now have to start to work with it. We have to look at it from all angles. We have to reflect about such a teaching. We have to think about it from all possible viewpoints, and once we have done that sufficiently, then we have made that assumption, that possibility that it could truly be as we are taught, into a certainty. We make it into a certainty in such a way as to come to the conclusion that indeed it cannot be any different. And having come to that particular point, we have then given rise to the knowledge or the intelligence that occurs through reflecting about that which one has heard or learned. When proceeding in this way, and reflecting and correspondingly also meditating for that matter in this way, then eventually we will become entirely free of any idea, of any concepts about appearances, phenomena, and even about such ideas concerning our own perceiving consciousness itself. We will become free from all of these four extreme types of views which could assert that either something is or is not, or is at the same time not, or is either there or not there. Or we become free of the 8 types of assumption, or whatever they might be. If we familiarize ourselves in such a way that we truly come to experience the empty, non-existent nature of all of these appearances, these phenomena, all the way down to our very own perceiving consciousness itself, then eventually it will come to pass that we continuously rest within that realization, that we come to rest within that recognition which has become an utter certainty within ourselves, and there is no more mistake, there is no more doubt about anything of these points whatsoever left. At that particular point, once we have proceeded, once we have progressed to that realization, and once we have brought about a stable and continuous resting within that recognition, well, then indeed do we have the power to do whatever we like with whatever perception, with whatever circumstance, and shape them according to our own liking. That is then the so-called wisdom or knowledge that arises or that occurs through training or through meditation, for that matter. Once we have indeed made such realization, gained such realization for ourselves, and continuously rest in it, then indeed we have the ability, as was said before, to influence whatever circumstance, whatever appearance and phenomena according to our liking. And then we can do as the great masters, the great accomplished practitioners such as the Mahasiddhas of the past have done. At that point we are truly able to benefit whatever possible students might have been following us up to that point. Then we are able to truly protect them from whatever type of dangers or hindrances they might encounter, and we truly have the ability to really bring about benefit for others. So that comes to pass more or less by itself. Once we have truly gained such realization, then we are indeed able to perform all sorts of miraculous deeds for the benefit of others.
Luhipa is our Samak Chido, Senyamlan Rogunan, to say young Rinpoche and Gordon. Then Ganga Shinto on Tenga, Choagunan, Ganjika, Shinto Temple, Shinto Yomari. Hadele Bangalak, then Jamsuke Kala, Nyamu, Senginji, and Nyabayo. Then happened, Nyabatanchi, Nyasi, Nyaga Juma to Tetanki Tana Yogo. Tati, Nyaga Jumala, so Palangara, so things in it, Tanko, Tantu, Gong and Yamatina, the Yamundo Gong. Tati and Rawala, Nyaga Juma Kona, Yin, Yamatin, Kolo, Tantu, Chetu Gambari.
Yeah, a story of one of the great Mahasiddhas of the past who was known as Luhipa, not to be confused with our good Luhipa, who is present here and was not one of the Mahasiddhas of the past. Otherwise she would not be here, could she? He was one of the famous masters of his time, one of the 84 Mahasiddhas of India, and at the time when he was traveling around the country and practicing, he found it at a certain time somewhat difficult to find fresh food. It was winter time, during which even in India there is not much fruit available, or other foods for that matter. And he wandered about far and wide until he finally came to the shores of the ocean in northeastern India, in the region that then and now was known as Bengal. He came upon a great many fishermen who were going out to the ocean in their boats, catching fish, killing them, and gutting them, throwing away all the fish guts in a big heap somewhere there on the beach. And Luhipa thought to himself, well, since all of this stuff is being thrown away anyway, why not use it as sustenance for myself? Why not use it as food? Which he then proceeded to do. He was feeding on these fish entrails for a long time while practicing intensively his chosen Yidam deity, Chakrasamvara.
Then Jagal also, and Jabotella, Bama Senda Zone. Then you get any Jabochimbo, not on Damba, long jet on Damba, Corponso, yet on Damba, that end of Jabuchi, or Jabochimbo. That end of La Pando, Goni, that is a heavy one.
As Luhipa then continued his practice while feeding on fish guts, eventually the moment came for him to achieve accomplishment. And after he had achieved accomplishment, after he had achieved realization in this way, he then rested in meditative absorption. And one day the question arose within his mind, how and where do I now benefit others? And then eventually within his mind there arose this certainty that there is a king, a king who lives in great splendor in the southern part of India, whose name was Mahachandra. And Luhipa knew at that moment that now the time had come for this king Mahachandra to be benefited by him, that now the time had come that he was ready to receive instruction, and consequently Luhipa then traveled to southern India. And Luhipa arrived in the presence of this king just at the very right time. He arrived at the time when the birthday of the king was celebrated. The entire countryside, everything was decorated, everyone was in a festive mood. And Luhipa arrived at that moment when there was a procession of 32 ministers who each of them were bearing a vase full of flowers in order to present them to the king. Under these circumstances, Luhipa arrived at that scene. When Luhipa arrived there, it was rather just while preparations to receive the king were still underway. Like inside a beautiful park, a tent had been erected, which was being decorated with flower garlands, in the center of which a lion throne had been erected, and everybody was busy preparing that scene for the imminent arrival of the king Mahachandra. Yeah, while everything was under preparation, everything was being arranged nicely, the king's arrival was very likely expected very soon. All of a sudden that Mahasiddha Luhipa appeared somewhere on one of the pathways that led to that tent, to that pavilion in which the king was going to be received. He was rather scantily clothed, one could say. He had just barely covered himself by way of wearing a very tiny loincloth. His hair was bound up in a decorative knot. He must have looked rather good. And he just sat there and did not give the appearance of really getting what was going on at all. He was just sitting there, staring aimlessly about. And these 32 ministers of the king came along and beheld that rather dismal sight. One can imagine what they thought. Can't someone get that hippie out of here? And of course they approached him and said, "Hey, you, get out of the way. We're busy to get ready for the arrival of our king. This is just not the right moment for you to be loafing around here." But Luhipa gave no hint of having understood a word of what had been told. He just continued to hang about there in a rather leisurely fashion, giving these ministers a large headache.
medo pombatam ji sala khole.
Well, the ministers proceeded to argue with Luhipa, but he still continued not to show any sign of understanding, let alone of cooperation. And then they figured, okay, what's to be done? This is the very path that the king is going to come down from his palace. We have to get this person out of the way. So they decided to simply carry him away. They grabbed him by his legs and arms, all the 32 of them, and wanted to go heave-ho, here we go. But they had to find out this man was so incredibly heavy, they could not move him at all. They were dragging him in any which way and nothing at all happened. They couldn't move him an inch. And they were rather astounded about that. In that particular moment, Luhipa all of a sudden gave a sign of life by way of laughing in a very terrifying manner, as Rinpoche also Christopher so demonstrated. So I don't need to do so again. They were so utterly terrified by this laugh that they felt completely petrified, and they even dropped their flower vases, which heretofore they had been carrying. So not only yeah, I can be stubborn. So not only could they not move this person out of the way, now also the vases with the flowers were broken. So they found themselves all of a sudden from the frying pan in the fire.
Mahachandra can dinosaur. That Cherong, Pepsadon, Jusatella, Niamba, San Chapuchit in this Lebdu, Mesogan and the Togumundu, that can't it take it. Jaboga, and he don't charge it. Naranga, Mama, Gamba, Tama. And this song, along so the Niamba Parsay. From the road, children on the Yaku.
So the ministers were utterly in despair what to do. Apparently they couldn't do anything. Try as they might, this person would just not move. On top of that, he even laughed at them in a rather insolent way. So what to do? A couple of the ministers went into the presence of the king and rather meekly admitted to him, they say, Your Highness, we do have a problem. Now, just down the path that you will be coming in a few minutes to be received, there is that madman. He probably is even dangerous, but we can't move him. What are we to do? He sits there right in the middle of the path, squatting there, and we just can't get him out of the way. Now, the king got a little bit upset about that. He said, what? You just can't move that guy away, and he dares to create this problem at my birthday of all days? Send my army. Send them with our weapons and their swords, have the guy cut into pieces and throw the pieces into the river. And off they went.
Luhipa, the Martin, you were Luhipa. Ha ha! They were ha ha! I did as Martin Ganga Nimbari. Ha 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 ha!
So the army set out, armed to the teeth, as armies usually are. And they came upon the spot where Luhipa was sitting squat right in the middle of the path. Now Luhipa saw them come, but he actually let them come quite close. And when they had come very close to him, he raised his right hand in a threatening gesture and he shouted, ha ha, hee hee. And at that very moment, the entire army, all of the soldiers, all those who were bearing weapons, went utterly crazy. They were dancing about in a completely mad fashion, themselves going ha ha, hee hee all the time. And they had forgotten all about the task they'd been sent to do in the first place.
당한 때는 이안 조기 나랑 로가 람보체라 가득지 다는 거로 요거든지 람보체라 람보체기 제차 받으면 봐서 대단한 잡고 거론 것이야 되는 이양 상지 모든 것은 상지 되는 대비용만 되는 해용 루히파가 제일아 해도 잡고 람보체기 땅마 밥 되니 그나 사자지 제 접신의 인사 나지소 소는 말 저서인 라비 되니 루히파가 저서인 라비 나 잡본 범마선다 주지 라비 되니 범마선다 제 마저 서인 라비 나 잡보인지 되니 저 잡보야나 저라 자식 강 요래 저라 잡부가 한번 강 요래 잡부 한번 요래 농간다는 나랑 우두 랑스르보 제부도와 대대는 나랑 농약 되니 님마도 나와 샤르도 되는 나가 로게 되니 나루게 샘데 동바신도와 되는 나랑 그 쯤모래 되니 생긴 망보신도와 되는 나랑 남방지.
남방지나.
나랑 요.
그래서
다
어릴 방법.
그렇게 코로라 잡은 남방. 되니 라리. 되니 잡은 mom만 나 지금 지소소는지 나라 당마시 노노지 쉬래. 온 드근도스. 되니 콜로 댐 쪽에 제도 매마시 땡 다처럼 근데 냠서랑도 되니 뭐발아처럼 들어와서 그래 송아리.
So the message had to be conveyed to the king that nothing was of any avail. Now even the entire army had gone stark raving mad. What to do? The king considered for a while, and having been a clever king, he thought, well, that sounds all rather extraordinary, so maybe that person is someone who has achieved accomplishment. Maybe that person is someone who is known as a Mahasiddha. So I should go and look at that person myself. And he said to his retainers, make ready my elephant. And they were all sent out to, in a short time, ready the elephant of the king, ornamenting the animal with all sorts of jewels and flower gardens, etc., as it is befitting for a king. The king then climbed upon the little box on top of the elephant, and then in full state procession with all of his ministers and retainers and whatnot, he went then into his park in order to encounter that rather strange person, that prospective Mahasiddha. As he came upon him, he got off his elephant, he folded his hands at the level of his heart, and he bowed slightly. And Luhipa then asked the king, "Who are you?" The king answered, "I am the king Mahachandra. Who are you?" And Luhipa replied to that, "I also am a king." To which the king in turn asked him, "What sort of king are you? What are you the king of? Where is your kingdom?" And Luhipa replied, "Well, the sky above my head is my parasol. The clouds in that sky and the wind are constantly fanning me. The sun and the moon are the lights that brighten up my palace and my kingdom. All of these beings around here, they are my subjects, and the fact that my mind nature is empty, that is my queen." And the king then realized that he had actually come upon a realized being, that he had come upon a Mahasiddha, and with great devotion he then prostrated to Luhipa and requested empowerment and instruction from him. To which Luhipa then agreed, and he proceeded to give him the Chakrasamvara empowerments for transmissions of all the tantras, the corresponding liberating instructions and so forth. And he said to the king, if you continue to practice this meditation of Chakrasamvara, this practice of the Chakrasamvara tantras, etc., then in the future you yourself will achieve the same accomplishment as I have achieved.
콜로 댄스 냥서는 제주가 거네. 그런 드바 토비용하네. 드바 토비용데 되네
Having received the transmission of the Chakrasamvara Tantras, the liberating instructions, and having been instructed to practice accordingly, he then proceeded to do so, and after he had practiced the Chakrasamvara Tantras for a certain time, he indeed, as prophesied, achieved the full accomplishment of that particular practice, and he became known among the 84 Mahasiddhas as the Mahasiddha Dharika. Time is up again, and Rinpoche has also been requested to give the lung, the oral transmission.